It's me, Gabby. I hope you're all doing well. Sorry, forgot what I was going to say then. Anyway, I am back with another Coffee and Crime ASMR. This one took a lot of should I, shouldn't I sort of thing, but I've written a few notes down here, and I've also got some notes on my laptop, so I'll be going backwards and forwards from both, so you might see my eyes dying down and then dying back up again. But yeah, so tonight we're gonna explore the story of Dr. Death. So in the UK there was a man called Harold Shipman who was a doctor, and he ended up killing 15 patients of his, and he was known as the most prolific serial killer in modern history. So I thought we could do something based in the UK tonight, because I tend to do a lot of American stories, but this one is something that I'm relatively sure about, because obviously I was growing up when this was all happening, so I can remember most of it being in the news. But yeah, so he was born Harold Frederick Shipman on the 14th of January 1946. He married Primrose Oxtoby in 1966 and had 4 children with her. He studied medicine at Leeds, and he graduated in 1970. So he began working at the Pontefract General Infirmary in West Riding of Yorkshire, and in 1974 he took his first position as a general practitioner. GP is what we call them. It's basically just like a doctor that you'd go see in a clinic. And that was at the Abraham Omerod Medical Centre in Todmorden. In the following year, he was caught forging prescriptions of Pethidine for his own use. He was fined £600 and briefly had to attend a drug rehabilitation clinic in York. He became a GP at Donnybrook Medical Centre in Hyde, near Manchester, in 1977. He continued working as a GP in Hyde throughout the 1980s and established his own surgery at 21 Market Street in 1933, becoming a respected member of the community. In 1983, he was interviewed in an edition of the Granada television documentary World in Action on how the mentally ill should be treated in the community. A year after his conviction, the interview rebroadcast on Tonight with Trevor McDonald. Trevor McDonald is he's a big journalist in the UK who will interview people, and he's very respected for that. He did a lot of prison documentaries as well, so he'd go into prison and interview cellmates. Yeah. So he got caught in 1988 when people started noticing what he was doing. So in March of 1988, Linda Reynolds of the Brook Surgery in Hyde Manchester district about the high death rate among Shipman's patients. In particular, she was concerned about the large number of cremation forms for elderly women that he had needed to countersign. The matter was brought to the attention of the police, who were unable to find sufficient evidence to bring charges. The Shipman inquiry later blamed the police for assigning inexperienced officers to the case. So, between the 17th of April 1988, when the police abandoned the investigation and Shipman's eventual arrest, he killed 3 more people. Several months later, Hyde taxi driver John Shaw contacted the police, informing them that he suspected Shipman of murdering 21 of his patients. So, Shipman's last victim was a lady called Kathleen Grundy, who was found dead at her home on June the 24th, 1998. He was the last person to see her alive. He later signed her death certificate, recording old age as the cause of death. Grundy's daughter, lawyer Angela Woodruff, became concerned when solicitor Brian Burgess informed her that a will had been made, apparently by her mother. There were doubts about it being real or not, because I can't pronounce that word. In my head I can, but I can't say it. The will excluded Woodruff and her children, but left £386,000 to Shipman. Luckily, she was a lawyer, so she knew what she was doing. At Burgess's urging, Woodruff went to the police, who began an investigation. Grundy's body was exhumed and then examined. It was found to contain traces of heroin, often used for pain control in terminal cancer patients. Shipman claimed that she was an addict and showed them comments that he had written to an effect on his computerized medical journal. However, examination of his computer showed that they were written after her death. Shipman was arrested on September 7th, 1998, and was found to own a Brother typewriter of the kind used to make the forged will. The police then investigated other deaths Shipman had certified and created a list of 15 specimen cases to investigate. They discovered a pattern of his administering lethal doses of diamorphine, so the heroin, signing patients' death certificates, and then falsifying medical records to indicate that they had been in poor health. He's a very bad man. Prescription for Murder was a 2000 book by journalists Brian Whittle and Jean Ritchie. Advanced 2 theories on Shipman's motive for forging the will: that he wanted to be caught because his life was out of control, or that he planned to retire at the age of 55 and leave the UK. In 2003, David Spiegelhalter suggested that statistical monitoring could have led to an alarm being raised at the end of 1996, when there were 67 excess deaths in females aged over 65 years, compared with 119 by 1998. The trial for Harold Shipman began at Preston Crown Court on the 5th of October 1999. He was charged with the murders of 15 women by lethal injections of diamorphine, all between 1995 and 1998. See, this was just a 3-year span, when realistically Marie West, Irene Turner, Lizzie Adams, Jean Lilly, Ivy Lomas, Muriel Grimshaw, Marie Quinn, Kathleen Wagstaff, Bianca Pomfret, Nora Nuttall, Pamela Eiler, Maureen Ward, Winifred Miller, Joan Melia, and Kathleen Grundy. His legal representatives tried unsuccessfully to have the Grundy case, where a clear motive was alleged, tried separately from the others where no motive was apparent. But on January 31st, 2000, after 6 days of deliberation, the jury found Shipman guilty of 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery. Mr. Justice Forbes subsequently sentenced Shipman to life imprisonment on all 15 counts of murder, with a recommendation that he never be released, to be served concurrently with a sentence of 4 years for forging Grundy's will. On the 11th of February, 10 days after his conviction, the General Medical Council formally struck Shipman off his register, and 2 years later, Home Secretary David Plunkett confirmed the judge's whole life tariff, just months before British government ministers lost their power to set minimum terms for prisoners. While authorities could have brought many additional charges, they concluded that a fair hearing would be impossible in view of the enormous publicity surrounding the original trial. Furthermore, the 15 life sentences already handed down rendered further litigation unnecessary. He consistently denied his guilt, disputing the scientific evidence against him. He never made any public statements about his actions. Shipman's wife, Primrose, steadfastly maintained her husband's innocence even after his conviction. Shipman is the only doctor in the history of British medicine found guilty of murdering his patients. John Adams was charged in 1957 with murdering a patient, amid rumours he had killed dozens more over a 10-year period, and possibly provided the role model for Shipman. However, he was acquitted. Historian Pamela Cullen has argued that because of Adams' acquittal, there was no impetus to examine the flaws in the British legal system until the Shipman case. He hung himself in prison on the 13th of January 2004 in Wakefield Prison, and it was the day before his 58th birthday. He was pronounced dead at 8:10 a.m. He hung himself from the window bars of his cell using bedsheets. The victims' families said that they felt cheated, and that his suicide meant that they would never have the satisfaction of his confession, nor the answers as to why he committed the crimes. His death divided national newspapers, with the Daily Mirror branding him a cold coward and condemning the prison service for allowing his suicide to happen. However, The Sun ran a celebratory front-page headline saying, "Ship, ship, hooray." The Independent called for the inquiry into Shipman's suicide to look more wildly at the state Britain's prisons, as well as the welfare for the inmates. In The Guardian, an article by Sir David Ramsbottom suggested that whole life sentencing be replaced by indefinite sentencing. This would at least give prisoners the hope of eventual release and reduce the risk of ending their own lives by suicide, as well as making their management easier for prison officials. But I don't agree with that at all. If you've committed a crime, like this person, not just once, but like 15 times at least, and you've killed somebody, then you should get life in prison. Why would they give people indefinite sentencing and give them hope? That would mean that more criminals would go out and do more criminal activity because they thought, well, might not get life in prison, might get out. That's not how it works. I don't think it is anyway. Shipman's motive for suicide was never established, though he reportedly told his probation officer that he was considering suicide to assure his wife's financial security after he was stripped of his NHS pension. Primrose Shipman received a full NHS pension. She would not have been entitled to it if Shipman had lived past 60. Since Harold Shipman has died, his wife Primrose has begun to suspect his guilt. He refused to take part in any courses which would have encouraged acknowledgement of his crimes, leading to a temporary removal of privileges, including the opportunity to telephone his wife. But his wife sent him a letter saying to tell me everything no matter what. But in 2005 an inquiry found that Shipman's suicide could not have been predicted or prevented, but the procedures should nonetheless be re-examined. It had all gone on in January 2001. Chris Gregg, a senior West Yorkshire detective, was selected to lead an investigation into 22 of the West Yorkshire deaths. Following this, the Shipman inquiry, submitted in July 2002, concluded that he had killed at least 215 of his patients between 1975 and 1998, during which time he practiced in Todmorden, 1974 to 1975, and Hyde from 1977 to 1998. Dame Janet Smith, a judge who submitted the report, admitted many more deaths of a suspicious nature could not definitely ascribe to Shipman. Most of his victims were elderly and in good health. In her sixth and final report, issued in January 2005, she reported that she believed Shipman had killed 3 patients, and she had serious suspicions about 4 further deaths, including that of a 4-year-old girl. During the early stage of his medical career at Pontefract General Infirmary, in total, 459 people died while under his care between 1971 and 1998. But it is uncertain how many of those were murder victims, as he was often the only doctor to clarify a death. And so he actually charged 6 doctors who signed cremation forms for Shipman's victims with misconduct, claiming that they should have noticed a pattern between his home visits and the patient's deaths. All these doctors, though, were found not guilty. In 2005, in the October, a similar hearing was held against 2 doctors who worked at Tameside General Hospital in 1994, who failed to detect that Shipman had deliberately administered a grossly excessive dose of Also in 2005, it came to light that Shipman may have stolen jewellery from his victims, as well as money. In 1998, police had seized over £10,000 worth of jewellery they found in his garage. In March 2005, when Primrose Shipman asked for its return, police wrote to the family of Shipman's victims, asking them to identify the jewellery. Unidentified items were handed to the Assets Recovery Agency in May. The investigation ended in August. Authorities returned 66 pieces to Primrose Shipman and auctioned 33 pieces that she confirmed were not hers. Proceeds of the auction went to Tameside Victim Support. The only piece returned to a murdered patient's family was a platinum diamond ring, for which the family provided a photograph as proof of ownership. A memorial garden to Shipman's victims, called the Garden of Tranquility, opened in Hyde Park on the 30th of July 2005. As of early 2009, families of over 200 victims of the Shipman were still seeking compensation for the loss of their relatives, who were perfectly fine. In September 2009, authorities announced that letters Shipman wrote in prison would be sold at auction, but following complaints from victims' relatives and media, they withdrew the letters from sale. Good. So, yeah, that's the story of Dr. Death here in the UK. I'm going to, next time, see if I can find a similar story but from a different country. Maybe in America or Australia, somewhere like that. But yeah, for now, I'm going to go because my house is very noisy tonight. No one seems to be staying still and they're all walking about. But I hope you all enjoy this. If you do, feel free to subscribe, like, comment. I talk back to you all. I like talking.